One of the bigger mysteries of the war in Ukraine is the pace of casualties on both sides. The issue, of course, is that bargaining strength is determined by expected losses, and neither side wants to give the perception that they are suffering the greater costs. But none other than Vladimir Putin himself may have inadvertently given us a window into Russia's actual losses. The comments came during a June 5th conference with heads of various international news agencies. This is a video from the actual event, but I fear his actual comments devolve into some more basic nuts and bolts. For background, the Kremlin's official website publishes frequent updates with what Putin is up to. All of it is in Russian, of course, but some of it gets official English translations. And fortunately for us, our focus today has such a translation. Oh, and fair warning, we are going to be doing a bit of math here. The question was about Russian losses in Ukraine. Again, not the type of thing we would expect to get meaningful information about. And in case we were not sure about that, Putin's immediate response pointed out this exact problem. There is a certain irony here, in that right after saying that no one gives the true numbers, Putin claims some numbers. Specifically, Ukraine is suffering 50,000 casualties per month. Again, this is not the interesting bit. Just as you have an incentive to underrepresent your own losses, you have an incentive to overrepresent your opponent's losses. But let's break this down for a moment. Irretrievable losses usually means fatalities, though I will leave a caveat here, that sometimes it does not mean that, but rather wounded to the point that the soldier will never be able to return to the battlefield. Now, that is the same difference if our focus is on combat capacity, but it is different if we care about the political implications. And if you are wondering what the heck this dog has to do with that, the answer is nothing. It is just that dogs are awesome, and war is not awesome. Anyway, where was I? Right, sanitary losses. These are non-fatal casualties that may or may not prevent the soldier from ever returning to battle. The key to all of this is that Putin, earlier in the answer to that same question, said that the irretrievable loss ratio is 5-1 in Russia's favor. Well, alright, let's apply the math. 50,000 total Ukrainian casualties, half of which are irretrievable. Russia suffers a fifth of that, and you get 5,000 Russian irretrievable losses monthly. So the media speculation is that Putin was using the standard narrative on Ukrainian casualties and made a small error by not realizing that the ratio claim gives us an estimate on Russian casualties, which may be more accurate than what the Kremlin would normally publish. Use a very conservative 1-to-1 non-fatal to fatal casualty ratio, and you get 10,000 total casualties per month. Use a more standard 3-to-1 ratio, and you get 20,000 casualties per month. That gets us close to the 24,000 casualties from Germany's public estimate. Look, at the end of the day, we won't know whether 20,000 is correct. But let's take it as a given for the rest of this video, and see what it would imply. The headline issue is whether those losses are sustainable for the Kremlin. And, well, that's another trillion-dollar question. The public estimate from Ukrainian intelligence is that Russia is recruiting 30,000 new soldiers per month. That would seem to suggest that Russia ends up with a 10,000 soldier surplus per month, and thus a seemingly sustainable operation. The upshot for Russia is that this all assumes that none of the non-fatal casualties go back to the front, which is not true at all. So this surplus of 10,000 is actually some amount larger. Meanwhile, the 30,000 soldiers recruited per month is an unappreciated headline of the war. It was not always like this. Remember, at one point, Russia was so desperate for warm bodies that there was a mass mobilization to serve as a stopgap measure. But in the time since then, Moscow has ramped up the financial incentives in volunteer contracts with enough to convince tens of thousands of citizens, and otherwise, to sign up monthly. The caveats for the Kremlin, though, are more numerous. To begin, this assumes that Russia can keep every soldier in the military until they die. Clear schedules for Russian troop rotations is not publicly broadcast, which would indicate that many of the soldiers there are indeed staying for the duration. But that will come with long-term morale problems of its own. Troops need periodic breaks, lest their brains turn to mush. The bigger issues, however, come from the political side, and with actual progress with the front line. Just because you have enough soldiers to prosecute a war does not mean you have enough political capital to use them indefinitely. As a basis for comparison, even the highest estimates of Soviet fatalities during the Afghan War total 26,000. For the more recent US foray into Afghanistan, it was 2420. In Iraq, it was 4507. That means that Russia is suffering more casualties on a monthly basis than total American losses over either conflict. Bear in mind that neither of those was politically popular. But let's focus on the 26,000 figure instead. And regardless of whether we are using that conservative 1-to-1 injured-to-dead ratio, that would mean that Russia has blasted past that number in 2024, and we are not even halfway through June. Never mind what happened in 2023 or in 2022. Jumping back to the 1980s, even with just 26,000 dead, the Soviet Union eventually had to withdraw from Afghanistan due to a combination of political pressure and lack of progress. Speaking of that latter issue on progress, it has gotten better for Russia in Ukraine, though not by much. When we last looked at changes in terrain holdings, Ukraine achieved some small but consistent gains through last summer's offensive. Then Russia took control of the pace of the war, though still at a slow rate. Note that the vast majority of these changes came from the Zaporizhia and Donetsk regions. Afterward came May, and an unexpected northern target. This took advantage of a gray zone near the border that lacked fortifications. Russia used bases on its side of the internationally recognized division as a staging ground. Because the White House prohibited Ukraine from using US-donated weapons on those targets, Russia could pull off this operation with comparative ease. Indeed, the plan worked, allowing Russian forces to make progress along two salients. In turn, Russia had its best month since January 2023 and the Battle of Bakhmut. However, as we speculated was likely to happen as all of this was unfolding, the United States unlocked Ukraine's handcuffs on using US weapons across the border. This appears, for now, to have stalled the offensive in the north. On the other hand, the situation further south near Chasiv Yar and west of Avdiivka is still slowly trending in Russia's favor, though the distraction further north did not result in anything crazy like this. All of that is a complicated way of saying that this spike is not the expectation moving forward. For Russia to sustain a 0.03% expansion each month, it will need to find another new clever strategy to exploit, and likely another, and another. That could happen, of course, and particularly if Russia takes the high ground of Chasiv Yar. But it is not like easy military exploits grow on trees. This takes us back to the political problem. Even 0.03% monthly progress is not enough to make a visual impact on the map, unless you count this as impact. I swear it did move. Anyway, the real constraint is not on the number of soldiers, but rather on the political tolerance in Russia for this level of casualties over a long war. And indeed, a very long war seems to be what the parties are gearing up for. Zelensky recently visited Qatar and the Philippines. Not high-priority countries if you are expecting a collapse to happen any minute now. Back to Russia's political problem. One cannot win a war if one's country ends up in an open rebellion before victory. If that is not clear, just ask Tsar Nicholas II. It will help that Putin knows how to work his domestic media, but there are limits to that with what can spread from word of mouth. There also appear to be limits to the Kremlin's website, as it is currently down right now, Otherwise, I would have been showing you images from the end-of-year press conference. Of course, Ukraine is also losing soldiers and needing to find solutions to manpower problems. So even if we assume that Putin's claim that Ukraine suffers 50,000 casualties a month is hot air, Russia need not be perfect here. Its capacity, combined with its resolve, merely need to be better than Ukraine's. The other thing worth noting is that the 30,000 troops per month is often cited as some sort of static quantity. However, the first few 100,000 volunteer soldiers are the easiest few 100,000 volunteer soldiers to recruit. This is obvious by noting how the soldiers are disproportionately coming from poorer regions of the country, like parts of Siberia, and relatively few are coming from Moscow or St. Petersburg. So either the Kremlin is going to have to ramp up the compensation offers or lower the monthly quota. In addition, continuing to remove that many working-aged people from the population only causes greater strain on Russia's ongoing issues with inflation and its pension payment scheme. War is always a trade-off. But there are no trade-offs with these books. You can read them both. Back to back, even. Check the video description for more information about them. And if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you next time. Take care. There also appear to be limits to the Kremlin's website, as it is currently down right now. Otherwise, I would have been showing images from his end of year event. There are limits to what I can say.